All right. Well, welcome to the first stakeholder meeting for this zero emission bus implementation plan that DKS Associates is leading. We are the consulting team. So I want to welcome everybody. We are leading this on behalf of RABA. And let's go to the next slide. I want to quickly cover what our agenda is. My name is Mike Usen, and I'm the principal in charge on this project. And Binsi Koshi is our project manager. She'll be doing the majority of this presentation, but I just want to start with a brief introduction. We have a number of things we want to cover today. Today is the existing conditions. That's the focus, kind of where we've been so far. We're about halfway through the analysis part of the project, and we've got a lot to cover today. Firstly, I want to go through kind of real quickly. We're going to just do a quick round of introductions on the team and talk a little bit about what the project is about, why we're doing it, cover sort of what we've learned so far about the operations of the RABA's transit system, talk a little bit about some of the fuel options that we're looking at, zero emissions fuel, including hydrogen, as well as battery electric. We've conducted our initial round of modeling. We'll talk about that very briefly, and then kind of talk a little bit about what we're doing forward, which includes the next steps, and then we want to open it up for discussion. So let's go to the next slide. Spanish. We have a consultant as part of our team who can translate things into Spanish, but I'm going to attempt to ask a question in Spanish. Hay gente aquí que no comprenden inglés hoy. All right, so we all understand English. We weren't planning to do a direct translation today, but we do have the ability to translate the results of today's meeting into Spanish. Let's see, next slide. So what we're going to talk about again is a little bit about who is doing this project. Next slide. So on the RABA side, John, who's the general manager of RABA, is kind of sort of the project sponsor. Eugene is our project manager, and Brody is involved as well. I'm not sure which one are here at today's meeting. I'm just looking at the list. But hopefully they will join us. And then on the DKS side, we're the consulting team. As I said, my name is Mike Usen. Binsi is our project manager. Stefan is our lead analyst on this. And we also have three other members of our team, Gabir, Thomas, and Dave, who are not in today's meeting, but they are behind the scenes doing a lot of the work. And last but not least, not shown, is Elise, who is helping facilitate the public involvement process. And next slide. So let's see. I think Vinci, I think you're going to pick it up from here and talk a little bit about the project itself.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. So I'm going to first go over the purpose of the project, the goals and objectives of the project, and then at a high level, touch upon the overall schedule for the project, the public outreach elements, and then introduce the service area of the project as well. So purpose of the project, RABA, the Reading Area Bus Authority, had received a sustainability grant from Caltrans to prepare a zero emissions bus implementation plan. This plan basically will build off of relevant planning documents that are already prepared, like the rollout plan, the short range transit plan, CERTA's long range transit plan, RTP, etc., and evaluate feasibility of battery and hydrogen fuel cell transit systems, including how the conversion to clean transit technology would impact services and determine upgrades to RABA's facilities. We definitely see this project as a collaborative effort in close coordination with all of our stakeholders, which is you all. So thank you all for being here today. We definitely think that your feedback is important to us, and that will lead us to a successful project. So why are we doing this project? Well, the California Air Resource Board adopted the Innovative Clean Transit Regulation in December 2018, which mandates all the California public bus transit agencies to gradually transition to a complete zero emissions bus fleet by 2040 to combat climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So yeah, we're excited to prepare this plan, which will serve as a roadmap for RABA to meet this mandate. Oops. Okay, so here's a slide that shows the goals and objectives of the project. As I mentioned before, our biggest goal is to help RABA transition their fleet to 100% zero emissions buses by 2040 to meet CARB requirements and reduce particulate matter 2.5 and greenhouse gas emissions. Another goal of ours is to evaluate facility readiness and establish baseline conditions and coordinate with one of our biggest stakeholders, which is REU, to ensure adequate charging infrastructure and power supply. We also want to ensure that RABA's proposed vehicle replacement and zero emissions bus conversion schedule provides programmed improvements and meets ICT regulations. We will be conducting an analysis of operating costs and feasibility of zero emissions bus options like battery, electric, and hydrogen fuel cell to determine the best alternative for RABA. And we're in close partnership with Microgrid Labs for this project. We'll be using their software EV Opt to determine these options and the best alternative for RABA. Another big goal is to identify zero emissions bus maintenance requirements and impacts on facilities and workforce availability and training. So moving on to the project schedule, as you can see here, we kicked off the project in January, and since then we've been extensively collecting data. It's a close collaborative effort with DKS and RABA, and it's has been ongoing. We evaluated the baseline conditions starting in spring and drafted the existing conditions memo that goes over a literature review. It provides a detailed review of RABA's existing fleet, facilities, services, and routes. We started the implementation analysis, which is reviewing what the best alternative for RABA is. We're assessing RABA's routes and services and modeling that using EV Opt, the software provided by Microgrid Labs. And we will be continuing to do this work through the summer. And towards the end of the summer, we plan to draft the plan and hopefully in the fall, take it to the board for adoption. And as you can see, there's multiple gold stars throughout the project, which indicates our monthly PMT meetings with RABA. We're in close touch with RABA, where we meet and discuss project progress, challenges, etc. We also will be doing 3 public and stakeholder meetings, this being the first meeting. We'll be meeting with you all in the summer again, once we have some initial findings from our implementation analysis. And then towards the end of the summer again, as we start drafting the plan. Here's a detailed version of the schedule. It's just a project process, but it's basically the same process or tasks that I went over in the previous slide. I'll keep this short. It goes over, so the project process is to first collect the data, draft the existing conditions, and bring that to you all for review and get your feedback and introduce a project. Currently, we are conducting zero emissions bus modeling, planning, and operations, and assessing what technology would fit RABA the best. We also will develop preliminary design and cost evaluation and draft a memo, after which we'll come to you all for feedback again on our initial findings. And then we'll draft the plan, come back to you all again for feedback, and then draft the final plan. And as you can see on the top right corner of the slide, you'll see a QR code. I'd encourage everyone to use that code to go to our project website. We do post project materials on the website. We just posted our draft existing conditions memo. So feel free to take a look at that memo. It provides a very detailed overview of RABA's current services, routes, facilities, and fleet. So this slide kind of goes over the public outreach elements of the project. We drafted a public outreach plan that kind of goes over what our process is like for public outreach. We also, like Mike mentioned, are providing Spanish translations, and we'll be doing that for some of our social media graphics and fact sheets as well. We created a web page for this project where all the materials will be posted and available to everyone for review. We have also developed social media graphics, and we plan to do so moving forward so that RABA can post on their social media platforms. We will be creating a project fact sheet towards the end of the project that would summarize our findings. Stakeholder coordination, that would be throughout the project, and we'll be in close coordination with you all. We'll be meeting with you 3 times throughout the project, this being the first meeting, and then we'll meet with you, like I mentioned before, 2 more times. So here's the service area. The next couple of slides would go over the existing operations and facilities. And so for the service area, we mapped the rural service area. And that's because RABA has some routes that go outside the Reading area, one of them being the 99X route, which is an Amtrak throughway route that goes all the way to Red Bluff. RABA also has a 299X that goes to Burnie, and then 44X that goes to Shingletown. Those are commuter bus services. So the RABA rural service area basically covers Shasta County. Here's the RABA urban service area that covers Reading, Anderson, and Shasta Lake. There are 13 total fixed routes, and RABA has 54 buses and vans, and approximately does 406,000 passenger trips annually. Operations are managed through partnerships with Transdev services. Here's another map that shows, that's basically a zoom in of the previous map. It shows downtown Reading. As you can see, there are 10 fixed routes that serve the general Reading area, 2 commuter buses, 44X, that goes to Shingletown, and 299X that goes to Burnie, and then 1 Amtrak throughway that goes to Red Bluff. The stops are also shown in this figure here. And as you can see, RABA's facilities, the 3 facilities are also shown on the figure. And I'll hand it over to Stefan.
Thank you, Binsi. Good afternoon, everybody. So, yeah, I'm Stefan, also with DKS, supporting this team here heavily on the kind of fleet analysis side and implementation analysis, a lot of the modeling as it relates to kind of the question between battery electric and hydrogen, what is the right zero emission choice. So I'll quickly provide an overview of RABA's existing fleet and facilities. So on this slide, it's just a chart that breaks down RABA's existing fleet by service category. As you can see, I'm kind of listed at the bottom, and then the height of the bar is kind of equivalent to the number of vehicles that support each of those service categories. So starting from the left in the dark blue, you see the kind of the standard transit buses, 35-foot buses supporting the regular fixed routes. RABA has the 2 commuter routes, the 44X and 299X, in that little teal, supported by medium-duty cutaway buses. We've got the Amtrak route supported by 2 motor coaches. And then we've got a number of cutaways and passenger vans that support variable services, meaning the RABA demand response, which is the ADA paratransit service offered by RABA, the RABA runabout, which is a kind of service in designated zones within the urbanized Reading area. And then Shasta Connect, which is a kind of a service that is being transitioned as we're speaking from SRTA to RABA, with DHCL being the previous operator, but it was previously kind of funded and supported by SRTA, and now RABA will be doing that. So that fleet of 8 vehicles consisting of some cutaways and passenger vans is also shown. And then lastly, non-revenue vehicles are also part of the scope of this analysis, while they're not mandated to transition as part of the Innovative Clean Transit Regulation. They are mandated to transition as part of the Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation, another state-level regulation, and RABA is interested in converting those to zero emissions as well. So on the next slide, sort of similar data is shown, just more in tabular form, so that you can see a little more, more granularly. So for the fixed routes, there's a total of 20 vehicles, including 16 traditional transit buses supporting that service. You see those consist of 15 Gillig buses, as well as 1 all-electric Proterra bus. that is a 2019 model year. Proterra has since gone out of business, but there's other zero emission and battery electric bus manufacturers in the game, including Gillig. And then we've listed a few of the funding sources that all of these vehicles were purchased under. Actually, if we want to stay on that slide for another second, for the medium duty cutaway and the paratransit service options, so demand response and runabout and Shasta Connect. I was just going to say that a lot of these are Ford platforms with a number of different outfitters used to put a cutaway bus on the back or a passenger van and provide the necessary ADA outfitting requirements. So on that next slide, then we put a chart showing RABA's current projected replacement schedule. RABA has just, as of February of this year, completed a fleet replacement plan that designates replacement years based on useful life projections of each of their vehicles, based on kind of an assessment of which state they're in, what mileage they're at, what is the projected useful life for Federal Transit Administration requirements. And it kind of puts together this picture here, which is kind of, shows a relatively flat distribution, but there is certainly a little bit of a, it's a little skewed towards the near term. So there's quite a few number of vehicles that are due for replacement in the next 3 or 4 years. But we're looking at that sort of as a basis for, coming up with a suitable transition timeline for each of the buses, depending on the technology choice that we end up with. On the next slide, just a high-level overview for those on the call that maybe aren't as familiar with RABA's, service area or set of facilities. So, first and foremost, and very important to this project is the Downtown Reading Transit Center, the facility at which almost all of the fixed routes either originate or end or at least pass by. So if any sort of opportunity charging for battery electric was needed, it would certainly be at the very least at that location. We've evaluated at a high level some of the existing electrical demand and existing electrical infrastructure at the location, but sort of any potential upgrade needs at that location are based on what we come up with in terms of the right technology choice and mix. Second of all, the maintenance facility, which is sort of RABA's depot or base, where buses park overnight, as well as for some of the variable routes also during the day when they're not in use or on a call. RABA has an on-site existing DC fast charger there that's used to charge that existing Proterra bus. There's another what we call a level 2 charger, so a lower speed charger available for one of the electric passenger vans that RABA already operates. And then lastly, we added to this slide here the Canby Road transfer facility as one of the more prominent transfer facilities with a few routes intersecting at that location. So that could be another potential opportunity charging location if needed. All right. So with that, we want to get a little bit into the topic of hydrogen and what existing activity in that space of hydrogen is going on in the Shasta County and City of Reading area. So if we go to the next slide, first of all, we have to kind of just see that there's no existing commercial hydrogen fueling stations built and in operation so far north of Sacramento. So that includes and that is specifically for medium and heavy duty commercial trucks and buses. There are some passenger vehicle hydrogen fueling locations north of Sacramento, but nothing for the trucks and kind of the regional trucking and transit world. There has been a federal hydrogen hub awarded to the entity that applied on behalf of California called Arches. That is something that's kind of a statewide effort to be developed over the next 20 years. However, as part of that proposal, and as far as we can tell so far, there are no real activities planned as part of that award, which is a multi-billion dollar award in the Reading area. We have initiated some discussions and have had some of those over the last few weeks with potential hydrogen providers, which may ultimately deliver or procure, deliver, and ultimately dispense hydrogen into fuel cell electric buses for RABA. There's a lot of uncertainty in that regard, though, regarding pricing, availability, and timelines. So we're early on in that process, but we wanted to include this kind of here for transparency. And then, if I haven't stated that before, it's kind of we being the consultants as well as RABA, we have not yet made a decision on the respective mix of battery electric versus hydrogen solutions. It does, however, appear that RABA will end up with a mixed solution depending on the needs of each route and vehicle type. And we're kind of in the middle of doing that analysis. We've put a few just examples of transit agencies in California on this slide here with this map that is now, I think, a year and a half old. That was used in kind of a news article. This just again goes to show that there isn't really any transit hydrogen activity north of the Sacramento, or really north of the Bay Area. There's been a few transit agencies across the state that have gone for hydrogen, typically part of a mixed fleet solution combined with battery electric buses. But there's also a number of transit agencies that have opted so far exclusively for battery electric buses as their technology option. And it just depends on the agency to some extent on maybe preference, but to a larger extent just on the energy needs of each route, the length of each route, the schedule, the cost, the availability of respective hydrogen, or the ability to upgrade electrical systems to provide adequate charging. So again, we're in the middle of that analysis for Reading, but this just for you to have some perspective kind of statewide that there is some other agencies going either way. And I think with that, let's see. Okay, so the next section, real quick, we just got one slide here on some of the initial modeling findings. If we want to jump to that next slide. Without jumping too far ahead of ourselves, but if we group it into the three categories of we've got fixed routes, we've got the demand response and runabout service, and we've got non-revenue vehicles. The latter two categories seem more favorable toward direct electrification, meaning battery electric cutaway buses, passenger vans, and then non-revenue vehicles. Whereas the fixed routes supported by the 35-foot transit buses, they have a very strenuous daily duty cycle. RABA operates one vehicle per block for the entire day, which leads to a very high energy requirement for any given vehicle on any given day. And that is coupled with very short layover times. So a lot of the routes, as I was alluding to earlier, kind of come together at the downtown Reading Transit Center and have typically, 2 up to at the most 10 minutes, but typically more so 2 to 5 minutes of a layover time. And so we're assessing, battery electric charging options at that location, very high speed, kind of evaluating that against end of day refueling for hydrogen fuel cell electric buses. We don't need to get into any of the weeds that's kind of more shown on the right, just showing you, there's some energy modeling going on, and some of the red areas of those charts there show you that the energy needs of certain routes exceed what is typically available with battery electric solutions today. And then I'll pass it back to Binzi.
Awesome. Thank you, Stefan. So for next steps, so right now we're working on, like Stefan mentioned, we're modeling the routes, looking at different options for RABA facilities and fleet. So that's ongoing, and we'll probably have some findings and recommendations in the summer when we come back for our second stakeholder meeting. We're also coordinating with hydrogen providers in coordination with RABA and other third-party hydrogen providers. Our next stakeholder meeting will be in July of 2025. We will get back to you all with a confirmed date at a later time. And then our last stakeholder meeting will be in late August 2025 when we start drafting the plan. Well, that was it for our presentation. I think now we can go into question and answers. I don't know if we have questions in the chat, but we definitely have some questions for you all. And I think maybe we can go over these questions first and then open the floor for more questions. So I guess our first question is to Caltrans. Any thoughts, comments, concerns, questions for us on this project?
This is Kathy Gray from Caltrans District 2. One thing just to pay attention to, and I hope it works out well, is we do have a permitting process if you go on the state highway. So hopefully that's done early. If you put electrification down, or hydrogen. So
In terms of infrastructure?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's within the right of way.
Yeah. But it doesn't always, the routes are so different, but a lot of it is on our highway. Just say 273 heavily, right? So just something to consider. But excited about what opportunities, with us on this product.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy, for your input. We'll definitely keep that in mind and discuss with RABA as well on the permitting side of things. Any other thoughts or questions, Kathy, or others from Caltrans?
This is Kelly Babcock. I just wanted to say good job on the research. I don't have any other comments or questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. All right. Serda, I'm not sure who's here from Serda, but just wondering if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, or concerns.
Sure. This is Jen Paul. I'm at Chesta Regional Transportation Agency, CERTA. Looking at the list, a lot of us know each other. I'm wondering, this might be a question for John too, of kind of how you're going to deal with the politics of this in presenting it to the board. I know that as a consultant, you guys have a job to do, but we did have funding for hydrogen, and our CERTA's board turned it down. So I'm wondering kind of what your plan is for that.
Is John here?
Yes, I'm here. How we're going to present this to the board is we're looking to DKS to give us basically just to find the recommendations on how do we implement zero emissions technology in accordance with the innovative clean transit rule. And it is our intent to present those recommendations and findings to the RABA board of directors to then be able to give us direction on how to move forward. It's basically a fact-finding mission. So basically we'll talk about any cost considerations, if we have to modify routes in order to do charging, or what the implications are for bringing in hydrogen. So it's basically going to be a good toolkit for our board to be able to make informed decisions for the future.
I guess just my last thing is, John, have you let them know, the consultant know about the work that Rebel Group had done with the RFI?
Yes, DKS has been actively involved in meeting with the Rebel Group. They have And we've had a good dialogue between the two. So that information will also be included into the implementation plan. And Betsy, did we give you all the RFI responses?
John, I think we'll need the individual RFI responses, but we have a summary that Rebel Group had provided to us.
Okay, that's correct. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's it from me for now.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, I guess our next couple of questions is to REU. And I will probably let Stefan take over here, if that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Carrie Moore is on the call. Is that right?
I am.
Great, wonderful. Are you the lone wolf for REU today?
EC Chambers is also here, but I'm prepared to answer the questions that you might have.
Great. Well, thank you for being here.
Sure.
So DKS has also, in addition to this plan, been heavily involved in the city of Reading's as well as Shasta County's municipal fleet electrification plans, that both of which were completed, I believe, throughout last year.
Yeah.
And we've interacted a little bit here and there with REU on that, looked at some of the rates plans that you have. So, generally, as you can imagine, grid capacity is certainly of concern. I think it's not a question that we need to pose or answer today, but, as soon as we have any projections of potential loads that we might need to be adding at certain locations for charging, that would be a conversation where we would be turning our attention to you. I think something that we do want to touch on today is sort of on the second question there, the structure of rate plans. We understand that REU's commercial rate plans are currently not time of use dependent. I think there are also some limitations on the side of just advanced metering infrastructure and doing anything that's time of day dependent. But in addition to that lack of time of use rates, there are also substantial demand charges, and some of the initial modeling for high-speed charging has shown that would certainly show up in the operational expense estimates that we would be providing to RABA. So curious if you have any thoughts on that issue, if there has been any broader discussion at REU around potentially developing EV charging specific rate plans that would sort of alleviate that demand charge issue a little bit, or possibly even be time of day dependent.
Yeah, so I don't know how in depth you want to get, but I can just on a surface level, I can tell you there has been some discussion because we don't want to be obstructive to implementation of electric vehicles, but we also have our ratepayers to consider, and the cost of expanding high capacity feeders, we have to have a way to recoup that. And so currently in our rate structures, that's done through demand charges. We don't, and also the way our billing system works, it does have some limitations in terms of what we can offer for rate structures. But currently we don't have anything planned for relief of demand charges for any users, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that was our understanding from the work we did for the city of Reading and directly in Shasta County too.
Yep.
Well, we can continue the conversation outside of this meeting.
Yes.
Maybe the initial no is not, we certainly want to learn more. Even if it's worth exploring any sort of demand charge mitigated rate as part of the modeling that we do, even just as a potential option further down the road, we can engage more on this topic, but we wanted to get kind of your first feel on those issues, because certainly transit is one of the more challenging applications, and the applications where if we did go battery electric, we would require high-speed charging, which of course impacts your grid or your local distribution system.
Yeah, and we've also been talking with school districts who are in the same boat as RABA, with their routes and the requirements for high-speed charging. So I don't know, we have some ideas about how to potentially sort of distribute the costs, if you will, by implementing some distributed charging systems. But that probably should be a more in-depth discussion also outside of this presentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be following up with RABA and then likely with you directly, and we can have follow-up discussions. We just wanted to tease up those conversations a little bit.
Okay. And just in terms of the capacity question, I feel it's important to point out that grid capacity is one thing, that getting capacity actually to the site is not necessarily equivalent to grid capacity. So we really, site charging locations are pretty important.
Yeah.
So
I should probably say feeder capacity rather than grid capacity. So
yeah, so and we have two different feeders. We have the main substation feeders that come out of the subs, and then the distribution feeders, which then are basically fused taps off of that. And that's where things start getting more and more limited as we get farther away from the substations. So the locations of charging, and I think it would be a worthwhile discussion to consider charging locations where capacity does exist. And we do have our feeder load capacities, and we know where we have capacity. So I think the earlier discussions on that are better.
yeah, it'd be great to get access to the GIS coverages showing those locations.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks again for being here.
Sure.
And then Vincey, do you want to continue with the next
Yeah,
group of...
Jen, I did see Jen, you raised your hand, so I just wanted to ask if you had a question or.
Yeah, it was just about that, like how other utilities in California, how they have done the demand charging and created special rates for time of day charging and spread those costs out to their ratepayers, because others have done it. So I'm just wondering what the difference is for REU.
So REU is a municipal utility, which of course means that there's a bunch of other requirements, especially also with the kind of responsibility to the ratepayers. Kind of the largest example, of course, is PG&E in California, that has for a while had time of use dependent rates, as well as baked into that sort of mitigated demand charges. And they don't call them demand charges anymore, even they call them kind of subscription charges. But in essence, they're much lower versions of, accounting for that peak demand, just kind of using the argument that EV charging loads are much peakier. So, you have these ups and downs in peak demand when you compare that, for example, to an industrial facility that has a pretty steady and large demand. So that's sort of the nature of EV charging or battery electric bus charging, is you need, high charging speeds in a given moment or a small amount of time. And then most of the day, you actually don't need anything. So it's part of that issue that I'm sure, Carrie is aware of, and working through that in the rate making is not an easy process.
And do you know if Sacramento SMUD has a, no longer called demand charging, but that concept enacted?
Mike, do you know about SMUD? You were involved. You're muted.
No, I don't know that much about We have other projects in SMUD service territory, but and Gerbir could answer that question. He does a lot of work in SMUD service territory.
All right. Well, Stefan, I think you can continue with the questions.
Sure. So I think we've got at least, I think, who's from Amtrak? I think I identified someone earlier. Thought maybe the person dropped.
Good
Andrew,
afternoon. Hi.
good afternoon. Thank you for joining. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your role and your involvement in this Amtrak Thruway Route 3, which is RABA's Route 99X, and a little bit about the nature of that service.
Okay, so I'm based in Sacramento. I manage the Amtrak California bus network for the entire state. So I'm responsible for the schedules. So previously our Route 3 was entirely operated by a charter bus company and connects with the San Joaquin trains down in Stockton, and also Capitol Quarter trains in Sacramento. And those buses would operate from Stockton through Sacramento up to Chico and all the way up to Reading. My understanding is originally the San Joaquin JPA, which we operate the service on behalf of, was originally going to partner with SRTA for a service which was proposed to be called the Salmon Runner. That project, I'm not sure if it just got stalled or whatever happened to it, but San Joaquin JPA and RABA had partnered up, and it was transitioned. The Reading through Chico portion was transitioned over to RABA, John, last August, I believe it was.
That is correct.
And there are discussions that are going to be happening regarding RABA extending beyond Chico, going from Reading all the way to Sacramento. I don't know the timeline. John would probably have a better idea of what at least the proposed timeline is. And of course, between John and myself, we have to make sure that that matches up to what the San Joaquin JPA is envisioning also, and is what approved via their board. So right now, RABA operates from 2 round trips from Reading down to through Red Bluff down to Chico, and they connect to another bus service that we operate from Chico down to Sacramento and Stockton that connects with the trains. So that's kind of the present highlights and some background that I'm at least aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much.
And just to piggyback on Andrew's comments, as it relates to Sacramento extension, it's really going to be predicated on further direction from the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority on when would they like us to extend. I know they're waiting for CERTA's bus to rail plan to be considered by their board this Wednesday. And then we do have some meetings coming up to further discuss the next steps with that. But since we're a contractor to San Joaquin, JPA, and Amtrak, we're kind of operating under their time frame.
We both.
Andrew, is there any experience with zero emission buses in the Amtrak bus system in California that you're aware of?
Yes, but limited. So this kind of predates me, but in addition to the California network, we also are responsible for one route between Seattle and Bellingham. So we forget I think it was 2022, we issued an RFP, and it spec'd out for one full-size electric bus doing a round trip between Seattle and Bellingham. Because that worked, the mileage and the elevation, it all worked out perfect. And so it's a full-size motor coach. It's from ABC Company, or it's also known as a Van Hool electrified bus. So it is a full-size motor coach, which is fully electric. Here in California, most of our bus routes are the length of the trip is, and mileage-wise, is too much for electric vehicles at the moment. We're continuing to monitor as the technology progresses. The only other experience we have is we have an Amtrak route. It's not associated with any of the JPAs in California. It's a round trip between Salinas and Monterey that connects to the Amtrak long distance, the Coast Starlight. But that's a cutaway electric. It generally holds about 12 people, and that does 2 round trips a day. But the mileage is minimal for the 2 round trips. I think it equals out to about 100 miles.
Yeah.
But again, that's a cutaway.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for providing that perspective and some of the context that you're aware of. I'm sure we'll engage in more conversations too, but again, wanted to tee up some initial engagement here. So thanks for being here. So on the next slide, I think we have another set of questions for a few more entities on the call, and we'll try to touch on them quickly. Vinci, did you want to go ahead, or should I keep going?
You can keep going, Stefan. I'm trying to take notes as well.
All right, so then for the operator, so TransDev, we've actually had a meeting this morning with some of the folks from TransDev, regarding schedule and some of the operational requirements. I think, well, the question here is, touches on the existing Proterra bus. In the meantime, since we drafted this list of questions, we already learned a little more about your experience with that. Maybe what I'm a little curious about too is the transition from TransDev to MTM that's impending. John or whoever from TransDev, could you provide a bit more context on that? Also, maybe as that may be relevant to other people on the call.
Brody, may I ask if you could?
I'm sorry?
I was asking Brody if do we have a rep from TransDev here?
I believe Russ is on with us, but if he is not, I will happily walk you guys down that path a little bit. Just making
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay.
What's the question?
The question is sort of what's the timeline of the transition from TransDev to MTM as the operator? We understand there's likely going to be staff.
Yeah, MTM starts June 1st.
Is there any impact from that transition that would be, relevant to this project?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Yeah, we heard there's a lot of staff continuity with that, most likely.
Management for the most part is going to be continuing with MTM.
Okay. Yeah, and then I'm sure I think in the interest of time we can move on, but I'm sure we'll have more conversations about the kind of scheduling and other things that we were talking about this morning. So then City of Reading and Shasta County, we kind of grouped here together. I think there's a couple of folks from those two on the call. We supported your agency's electrification plans or fleet electrification plans last year. As part of that, we did explore a little bit the idea of shared charging infrastructure between multiple agencies in the area. For the Shasta County plan, we specifically proposed what we call the East Side Hub, which would be a large charging hub on a county-owned parcel, which happens to be fairly close to the RABA maintenance facility. So we're kind of curious if that idea has gone anywhere, if you're exploring this, and generally, more broadly speaking, maybe you want to explore if there's any appetite to potentially share some of the capital investment that's needed for charging infrastructure for all of your fleets, including RABA.
Yeah, hi, this is John Heath. I'm with Shasta County Public Works. And I guess I'm unfamiliar with DKS's involvement. I know I guess I'm more interested or used to hearing Frontier Energy kind of. So what's the relationship between DKS and Frontier?
So DKS was a sub-consultant to Frontier Energy in both of those projects. Frontier Energy kind of managed the projects, but we're the engineering firm that supported Frontier in doing a lot of the technical analysis.
Okay, great. Appreciate that. Glad to hear there's some continuity because, yeah, I mean, I guess this is going to be my comment, whether this came up or not, is that is there a plan for coordination? Because I think there's a lot of, I mean, all the jurisdictions are in the same boat. The school districts got mentioned, obviously the public transit system. So we're all in the same boat. So it does make sense that we have a shared kind of strategy and even some shared infrastructure. So for sure, that makes sense. What I will tell you, Stefan asked if we'd gotten any ground or made any traction. I think our board just received Frontier Energy's report here within the last month. And so, I think Jen Paulum from CERTA made or somebody made a reference to the political landscape. I mean, probably on the political side, there's not a lot of nobody's eager to be out front on this thing, I don't think, from the elected side of things. So I wouldn't say that there's any traction on that front, but as an agency and as a rep of that agency, it does make sense that we have some kind of coordinated strategy and where we can cooperate to have joint facilities or whatever the case may be. Seems to make sense.
Well, given the scarcity of both funds and kilowatt hours, getting access to, being able to share resources definitely is something we would love to help support.
Jen has her
Jen,
hand
you
up.
had a
Pretty much the only
question.
thing from Shasta County.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay, I lowered my hand, but I didn't hit unmute. With just in this discussion with City of Reading and Shasta County, and I see Shasta Lake, City of Anderson there. I'm just interested also if Caltrans has what their requirement it is to switch to zero emission. Because Caltrans District 2 is in City of Reading.
What's
I'm not really
anybody
sure
from
your question. We
so Kathy, I don't know, or somebody from Caltrans, any comment on where Caltrans is on their plan for their fleet zero emissions?
I mean, it's not in our hands. It's another office that deals with it more from the facility side of it. A lot of things are coming to our district that already are electric with our carpool. And we already have chargers, out there. But but we can't ask those questions to another office because it's not us.
Yeah, it could be worth connecting us to the right people in District 2.
I can have Kelly Babcock get that for you.
Yeah, sorry, Kathy, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I mean, and not just, I guess this always gets so big, but so many state agencies, not just Caltrans, are in Reading or around, and their need for charters too. But I think sticking with the local jurisdictions first is probably the best idea. I was just, thinking out loud some.
Well, and we definitely very few, normal size regular gas vehicles. A lot of things are showing up electric. So
yeah.
We have Teslas. We have just a lot of different ones out there.
Mm-hmm. Is anybody from the City of Reading on the call? Okay, if not, then that might be something for us to follow up on. Yeah, certainly want to get the city and the county involved in those discussions. How about Shasta Lake and Anderson? All right, well, that helps us finish on time. No, but we do want to have conversations. There's routes that go to Shasta Lake and Anderson, and there might be a need for charging infrastructure within their right of way, or within the city limits, more broadly speaking. So we were curious if there were any fleet electrification deliberations, or if facility electrification developments going on for those two cities. But if nobody is on the call, then I think that was it with our list of questions for you all. And like we noted already, there will be more need for and opportunities for us all to engage on various topics. So thank you for your input.
Yeah, thank you all. And I know we just have a minute left, but any final thoughts or questions? I know we asked a bunch of questions, but we also wanted to know if any of you had questions for us.
I just have a technicality question. Did you guys announce that this video will be posted on our website?
I don't know if we announced that we will be posting the video on the website, but Eugene, we do plan on posting the video on the website, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was just wanting to let the participants know that this is going to be public.
Yeah. We definitely want to post the video on the website, but also want to make sure that everyone here is comfortable with that.
I think we are good now. I just wanted to make sure everyone knows.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for checking, Eugene. All right. Well, not hearing any questions from anyone. We'll definitely continue these conversations, and we'll get in touch with all of you individually. I know we have some questions and conversations still to be had with REU and City of Reading and Shasta Lake and Anderson and others as well. So thank you all for joining our first public and stakeholder meeting. We really appreciate all your feedback. We'll come back to you all again in the summer with some initial findings and recommendations. And we look forward to hearing from you all again.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good evening.
Bye.
Thank you.